right in. I think let's take just a moment, and if you all would very briefly introduce yourselves and your role in RBM or RCS, and also highlight some of the drivers that are pushing the rollout, if you will. So why don't we just go down the line? Christen, would you like to start?
Sure, I'm Christen Emery. I'm the Director of Carrier Relations in Canada for Sinch. And I think that some of the drivers for RCS in Canada are obviously revenue for the carriers. And we want a trusted relationship for our subscribers. And also from the aggregator perspective, we have partners and brands who want to create a trusted relationship as well.
I'm Byrd. I'm from Vonage, which is part of Ericsson. We're a provider of APIs to all kinds of business, from two people in a garage through the largest tech companies, through enterprises, through platforms. We're obviously therefore in all sorts of messaging. Been sending lots of SMS messages, WhatsApp messages around the world, and RCS. The drivers, as we see it from our customers, who are people who are building customer experiences, is twofold. It's trust. Nobody likes SMS messages anymore. They don't trust them, as Gavin was talking about earlier, and they don't answer their phone. How do we create more trust in the communications? And conversations. We send trillions of SMS messages one way that I can't reply to. When it says my refrigerator's arriving, I don't get to have a conversation about, I'm not here, please don't do it. Instead, I have to find an 800 number and call back, and that's a crazy customer experience. So our customers are interested in building better customer experiences, and RCS is one vehicle for doing that.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to TELUS. My name is Diksha Goyal. I'm the product manager for messaging and application services. We launched RCS this past quarter, and our priority simply is our subscribers. Having the best experience. A2P and SMS is a unique space in North America that everyone here is a testament to how relevant the space is. And the next phase of that is really RCS. So making sure that they have the access to receive these messages and have a positive experience is what we're working towards with Caitlin and our DCAs.
And I'm Caitlin O'Neill. I'm the Director of Messaging Products for the CTA. And I would say that the drivers from, I guess, two different perspectives. As a consumer and as an Android user, RCS is so exciting, that enhanced customer experience that you all touched on. But then I think from an industry perspective, what's further driving us in collaborating with all of our industry stakeholders is to ensure that there is a high standard, right? There's a high standard for these RBM or RCS programs, and that we maintain that there's, I think a little bit of friction is good to make sure that it's not too easy to access. And so a lot of the work that we've been doing is trying to create an efficient process, something that's consistent, so that you also know across carriers, across networks, that onboarding experience and also that end user experience is going to be consistent.
Caitlin, you mentioned the consumer and the end user experience there. Starting with you, can you speak a little bit about what some of the expectations are that consumers have, that subscribers have, with regard to RCS and RCS for business?
Well, I think consumers are really, they adapt, right? There's been a lot of talk over the years about whether or not there needs to be this education to consumers about RCS, and I don't necessarily think that that's the case. I think consumers recognize something that's familiar to them. They recognize what that verified checkmark is and what that means. But I think it's so important for us to make sure that we launch RCS in the right way so that we're being thoughtful about it. But I think from a consumer perspective, it's just exciting. I think that people are just going to immediately be able to adopt it and just recognize that this is such an enhanced experience, right? You have you combine the best of both worlds with the simplicity and efficiency of SMS, but then like the functionality of an app.
Anyone else want to, Diksha? Go right ahead.
Yeah, I think like to Caitlin's point, even if the brands don't use the carousels or the quick replies or the features that go on with RBM, we're headed to a space where the branding will become the norm for a customer. It's the trust when you see the message coming from that it's a logo and it's been looked at and verified that I am receiving that message because it's been approved. We see that with the agents that we've launched on the TELUS network. There's 2 agents that Ryan mentioned earlier today that are currently in their pilot phase. And we see very positive engagement scores already in the preliminary scores. So I think there's a lot we can do, and the consumers will adapt to what they see.
So I'm going to take the view that consumers need no education about rich messaging. They've been using social messaging for the past 4 or 5 years. They're well used to, as Gavin was pointing out, WhatsApp, Instagram, Messenger, you name it, in different parts of the world. What they do need to know is that the brand can be trusted, that there's machinery behind it that's validating the brand. When they see the brand, it's real, it's not fake, that fake brands disappear quickly. The people I worry about are the developers in the middle. We're talking here about A2P, right? How do the applications get it? And what the applications need is consistency and automation and coverage across all the vendors. Brands are not interested if only one network in a country is available. We're now available in all networks in a range of European countries. We already have hundreds of agents up as a result because brands are saying, hey, I can now have these conversations with my customers in that country because I know it'll reach them and I'm not messing around with whether or not it'll get there on that particular network. And so what I encourage is let's get moving, but let's make it really trusted. And that's, I think, the responsibility of this community here is make it trusted. Consumers are going to be fine with getting nice messages and carousels.
Christen, anything to add?
Sure, I think so. From the subscriber perspective and also the brand perspective, we have the ability to increase the number of use cases that we have in messaging today. And I think one of our next steps with our brands, once we're actually live with all of the carriers, is to make sure that we are understanding what the individual use cases are that solve problems for both the brands and the subscribers. So from the Sinch perspective, we're going to be working with some of our largest resellers to work on those use cases and also our direct brands. So we're really looking forward to going live in Canada soon.
Great, thank you. Diksha, I'll start with you on this next question. As TELUS, obviously an early adopter of RCS and rollout here in Canada, what are some of the barriers that TELUS has faced in the rollout? And what are some of the actions taken to overcome those barriers?
There were a lot of firsts in the process of making sure RBM's available internally and externally. So in answering those questions, there isn't a perfect case, something that's more viable that helps you achieve the objectives that you set out for this channel. It needs room to grow, so you really need a starting point and iterate as you go. So I think that's a very important lesson as you're answering questions from your perspective for RCS, whether you're a carrier in this room or a DCA, that there isn't going to be a perfect state to start. And the second thing is there were a lot of challenges working externally as well. So I think understanding those timelines and how adopting that to your plan can implement this, like going out. I think that was important as well. But overall, I would say it's been quite a rewarding process. Like my team and I have been working for a long time to get to a state where we can say we're launched, and it's a testament to the solution mindset, like oriented mindset, that helped us get to where we are today.
And Lawrence, you mentioned some barriers in your talk a moment ago. What are some of the steps that Vonage is taking to overcome those?
Well, the business barriers for our audience, which remember are companies building applications are understanding the use cases, but most importantly, understanding the business value. What RCS and rich messaging in general opens up is a whole range of marketing style use cases, community building, customer communications. We have customers that have built WhatsApp communities, and back to, again, Gavin's point earlier, sending relevant messages. I send you a message because I know who you are, and we're in a dialogue. It's not a one-time messaging. I'm in a conversation. And so the barriers are people understanding what is the business value here, and then, as I said earlier, is it available, and is it easy from a development standpoint to use rich messaging for what I want to do with my customers.
And Christen, from a Sinch perspective, what are you all doing to overcome barriers for rollout?
I think that, obviously we've been waiting for Apple, we've been waiting for all the carriers, we have everything lined up at this point. And from the perspective of what we've done to get here, I think there's been a lot of education that's occurred for us to educate one another. Caitlin spent time with me as the MCC chair explaining to me how the regulatory planning process works in Canada. And at the same time, I already had experience with onboarding brands to RCS, and I was able to educate Caitlin. So those sorts of cross-functional, education relationships that we build with one another are going to continue into the future. And, to touch on what the collaboration group talked about earlier, we all still need to collaborate as partners in the ecosystem.
Great, all good, Christen, thank you. Great segue there to Caitlin. From a CTA perspective, obviously you have a broader view across all the different operators, et cetera. What is the CTA doing to expedite the rollout and limit some of these barriers?
I don't know that we're expediting anything, but what we're trying to do is we're working with our carrier members, and we've involved all of our aggregator CPaaS members to create a streamlined onboarding process. So something that Canada has a strong history with is having that kind of unified voice and that streamlined framework where all of the carriers are aligned on the same common set of requirements and criteria. And so what we're doing in Canada is trying to just replicate what we know works really well with short codes today. And it's something that works well for the carriers for onboarding and provisioning. It's something that works well for the aggregators. There are very clear processes, expectations. And so we're trying to kind of emulate that where we can and where it makes sense to for RBM. And we're also talking about the same kind of structure for 10DLC. So what we're trying to do in Canada is to have this very consistent onboarding process across sender types. It's not necessarily, we get a lot of questions and a lot of pressure that, the US has done this, so Canada should align and Canada should do it the same way. We're not trying to go against what the US has done, but we have something established. We have this benchmark that we can build off of. And so we're trying to kind of create our own messaging framework that is consistent, that has a high standard, that has clear, I think, accountability, clear compliance regulations, gives everyone more visibility. So that's kind of what our role is in just trying to set expectations. And ultimately, the goal would be that it makes it easier to launch because the DCAs don't have to go to each carrier individually. The DCAs don't have the carriers don't have different requirements or criteria that the aggregators then need to navigate. So kind of just taking, like I said, what we've built with short codes and replicating that because we know it works.
Great, and another good segue. It's almost like we talked beforehand. You mentioned the US in that. I'm almost afraid to ask given some of the earlier discussion, but for all the panelists, are there learnings that can be taken from the U.S. for RCS rollout? Lawrence, you want to start?
Well, I'm going to talk to Europe first, because I think the US, in terms of RCS, is just getting going in terms of availability across all the carriers. It's kind of in test mode. In Europe, as I said, we have seen coverage, and the key goal is how easy do you make it? I agree with Caitlin. You want consistency, but you want it done at speed. You want people to be able to get up to speed and build applications. I come from the enterprise software space. Don't come from telecommunications. So I'm going to be a little rude. I think we sometimes, from a telecommunications angle, tend to want to build the use cases first, want to build the proof first. Our experience over 15 years with Twilio, ourselves, and others in the CPaaS space or the API space is put it in front of people and see what they build. As Jeff Lawson used to say, I can't wait to see what you build today. We're always amazed at what people have built with the APIs we have, whether it's video, whether it's voice, whether it's WhatsApp, and now whether it's RCS. So making it easy and putting it in front of developers to see what will happen. And we've had that experience with WhatsApp, particularly in Asia Pacific, LATAM, and parts of the Middle East over the last 4 or 5 years. People build full commercial applications using rich messaging if given a chance.
Christen, I think you had some comments.
I think I've seen from working with Caitlin and each of the Canadian operators that obviously everyone wants to work together to come to this same basic onboarding for every carrier. And in addition to that, I think everyone's anxious to go ahead and get started. So we're not necessarily going to stop and revisit the billing models that there are and things along those lines. Doesn't mean that the Canadian carriers aren't open to moving forward and working with different types of business models or different types of billing models and experimenting as we go along. I think everyone's remaining flexible as we move forward, but where we're at right now is getting started and letting the market build.
Anything else to add?
Yeah, I think like the way I would summarize it is the questions that we're asking may seem complex, but the solutions don't have to be. Mm-hmm. Simplifying the process can make it easier to onboard from a brand perspective, but also give RBM a true chance to succeed in the market, because we've been talking about it for so long. So we should really be testing our hypothesis and seeing if this is going to work.
Great, thank you all.
I will add to that, to kind of Eddie's point, neither the consumers nor our developers have a clue what the difference is between RCS and all the other messaging. They just want it to work, and they want it to turn up on somebody's device, and they want it to look good, and they want it to be trusted. So, the rollout can happen very rapidly, but there's a lot of education involved, particularly for the development community in making it easy for them.
Great. Trust in the system and fraud has come up a number of times, both earlier in this panel as well as preceding panels. I'd like to ask each of you to talk a little bit about where you see the responsibilities across the carrier, CPaaS, content service providers for maintaining fraud prevention and specifically maintaining legitimate traffic and eliminating impersonation. So, Lawrence, I see you nodding your head. Would you like to start on this one?
You want more from me? Cyber fraud is a $10 trillion industry. It's probably the 4th or 5th largest economy in the world. It's a highly professional business. Everybody's under attack. And as the numbers said earlier, we've all given up complaining about it. We're just dealing with it, and it's not good. A lot of the fraud protection is, all of the above. Everybody's got to participate. It's not just about the messaging branding. It's how do you set up accounts. It's how do you watch fraud happen? How do you see fraud surges? How do you deal with account takeover? How do you deal with synthetic identities? There's a lot of different pieces. And as Eddie said earlier, we're going to see network APIs and verifying information from the network as a key way of doing it. One-time passwords over SMS are going to go away. They're not very good. They're subject to social engineering, and they're not very well trusted. So that whole part of the traffic is going to disappear once we get better ways of asking the network, is this the phone number I think it is? Did the SIM card just change? Does the identity of the person that the network knows have any resemblance to what is now being claimed by the customer in KYC? So we're going to see a whole range of different APIs and approaches to deal with fraud, and it is a huge problem, as earlier presentations presented.
Diksha, what has TELUS done to prevent fraud in this early rollout?
I think collaboration is truly the answer in this space. Like, we want to give the best experience to our subscriber as we're choosing which agents to approve and launch, but it also comes back to the use cases that likes of Sinch are discovering in the market and choosing to bring to us, and the work that's being done with Caitlin to create a framework where we can assess what's going to be approved and ultimately seen on the device. I think Canada can eventually become a case study for what collaboration and successful RCS can look like. And it's a testament to the work that's been going on for the past year.
Great. And Christen, what is Sinch doing to prevent fraud?
We're actually engaging with TELUS, and we'll probably be talking to some of the other operators to get to that point where we are looking past the two-factor authentication use cases. And I think that in the industry in general, there's a push and pull between creating a use case where we want to charge for information and a use case where we're going to share information freely in order to prevent fraud or circumvent it if it's already occurred. And I think that we need to, as a group, consider what those use cases are and where we're talking about maybe sharing some information in terms of sender IDs, campaigns, where things have gone wrong in the past. It's a place to look to consider without really necessarily calling a brand out in particular, but to look at where we can improve. I know that we have aggregators and vendors out there who still don't have two-factor authentication to log into their applications. And those are the sorts of things that we need to call each other out on, and we need to kind of stop doing some of those things where we're super vulnerable.
And Caitlin, from a CTA perspective, what is the CTA's responsibility for preventing fraud, and how do you balance regulation in this early adoption phase where you want to enhance the rollout?
Well, CTA's role is different with RCS and RBM than it is with short codes. With short codes, there are enforceable policies that are in place that CTA is responsible for enforcing. And with RBM, that's not the same. We kind of have these industry best practices. They're not necessarily as enforceable. It puts more of the onus on the carrier to dictate what those compliance policies are. But I think what CTA is trying to do is to be able to collect more information up front so that we can empower the carriers, the DCAs, give them more information about the campaign, the agent, so that when that goes live, there's more insight, there's kind of there's a baseline or a benchmark so that you know more about what was supposed to be running on that program, and then being able to compare it to what's actually live. And I mean, I think RCS is more challenging from a carrier perspective because of the encryption component. So I think like other A2P channels, I think the responsibility needs to be, not solely, but I think a lot of the responsibility needs to be on the DCAs, and that there does need to be a lot of accountability as to who they're onboarding. And I think what we're trying to do is to be able to, like I said earlier, kind of create a little bit of friction. If there's no friction, then I think it just makes it easier for bad actors to gain access to the channel. So I think a little bit of friction is important. And then what we're trying to do is, like I said, also collect more information about the campaign, the use case, the opt-in, what that customer experience is going to be like, so that we know when it's live what to expect and when to be able to identify drift.
Great, thank you. So we've heard about ecosystem collaboration a lot through this morning already. What are steps that can be done to ensure that there is the collaboration? And I'll make the obvious, easy statement first, so nobody else has to. Organizations like MEF and coming together in this forum, I think, enables that quite a bit. So I've taken that one off the table. Christen, would you like to start, and then we'll go down the line?
You took my answer. You know, regular calls with one another, you know, reach out and talk to your partner at the aggregator, your partner at the carrier. You know, Diksha and I meet probably once every other week, and you know, I do the same thing with all of the other carriers, even if we don't have anything to talk about. That's one of the places that you definitely start. And in addition to that, the CTA and the working groups that we have, there are people that are already talking about doing more working groups and expanding some of the work that we're doing. So I think we just need to work as individuals within this group to continue to do that.
So I'd like to call on all of us to collaborate in enthusiasm. I think in the industry, many people have been working on RCS for well over a decade. I think we've got RCS fatigue. I think we need to take a shower, a spa treatment, and take a fresh look at what does this mean for consumers, what does this mean for businesses, that they can finally move from boring notifications to true two-way, personalized conversations that are truly engaging for customers. And we need to be getting rid of the past and looking at how do we create that enthusiasm in our business audiences and in our consumer audiences, that messaging truly is a fundamental channel for better customer engagement.
Diksha?
Yeah, our RBM is like quite growing, and it's changing by the day. There's things happening outside of Canada that are interesting. So there's a lot to learn, really, but it's humanly impossible for one person to do it in a silo environment. Having frequent conversations with what, you know, seeing, like talking to Christen and what's happening, what she sees in her domain and how we can learn, and sharing that with Caitlin and everyone else, I think helps solve these problems in a way that works for multiple stakeholders, because we're designing processes not only for TELUS, but for the partners that we work with. So I think collaboration is really the heart of it.
Caitlin, anything to add?
I mean, I completely agree. I think there are a few people in this room that have been very generous with their time with me and helping me to understand all of the ins and outs of RCS and RBM. You know, one of the challenges of being in the role that we're in, or that I'm in, is, you know, we want to be able to help our members in the industry in establishing these processes, but we're not a carrier, we're not an aggregator, we don't have access to Google's platform. So it has been a lot of education. And so to everyone's point, I think collaboration has been so key. Otherwise, we would have been spinning our wheels for a full year. And I know that there are a lot of people who feel like Canada is really behind. And I mean, we might appear to be behind with RBM as it relates to actual brands that are live or agents that are live, but I feel like we've put in so much work behind the scenes that a lot of people don't know about, and it's been that collaboration has been at the heart of it. You know, we're working with the carriers. We have bi-weekly calls with an RBM specific group to talk about, you know, how we can move things forward, what some of the priorities are. You know, we're working with all of our aggregator CPAS members to make sure that any process that we try and implement has their input, because they're the ones that need to use it. So that has been the huge driver for us in being able to get to where we are now, is that collaboration.
Great, thank you. We've used our time, but I want to go down the line really quickly. What is the call to action? We've talked here, some of you have hit on that. What do you want the audience to do to enable rollout quickly?
Well, there's no brands here, so. Yeah. I really think that we just need to get started and get ready. So launching our programs as quickly as we can and making sure that we're tracking blockers with one another and removing them as we go along.
So let's get on it, make it trusted, but easy and simple, and let's be enthusiastic.
I think as a consumer, I'm excited to see the use cases that come up from this conversation. Hopefully by the end of the year, we'll be able to say that it's not just the 3 agents that we have and many more use cases that are coming up.
And I think my call to action would just be to engage. Now is the time to bring forward ideas, issues, identifying gaps. We're at that kind of pivotal moment where we have the ability to adapt and adjust our processes and what we're trying to build. So let's talk about it.
Great. Well, thank you all very much.